Hello.
Hello there.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
You're coming a little bit in and
And
out.
I,
Maybe we'll do
I
a quick
did a
tech
little
check.
earlier for this opportunity. Oh, okay. I'm going to turn my camera off because I notice sometimes when my camera is on, it has a tendency to break in and out.
It's
So
doing better
I
now.
might, is it better?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
It's doing better now. We'll see. All right. So, Michelle, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having this.
Oh,
I really
I'm so
appreciate it.
excited to talk to you. I'm so excited to talk to you. So, I'm doing this because I love to connect with fellow teachers, but I'm out of the classroom, so I want to make sure that I'm staying, friggity fresh with everything that's going on. Um oh, looks like so my family might be coming in the door at any second. So if you hear any background noise, that's why I got my headphones on. But we're in Zoom life right now. And it looks like you have probably the best props for Zoom life in the background here.
Yes.
Those are awesome.
Thank you. Yes, there might be a chance that we have to go back to all virtual because
Mm,
that's the way that I'm in Wisconsin and it's kind of cold here. And
yeah.
we noticed that for some of the lower grades, they already had to switch over to virtual for
Mm,
about a week or so. And I didn't take it apart because I was thinking, well, if it does happen, it's still up. But
yeah.
yeah, this was my setup for the past 20 months.
Oh, wow. Just that number just hurts.
It
Oof.
does.
20 months, man.
Yes.
All right. Well, so I'm glad that you're here and I hope that I can be of service to you. But trust me, I'm very glad that you're here because every question that you ask me is going to really help me as well. And if you are cool with it, depending on how you're feeling, I'm recording this for my own purposes so that I can, take notes and get all the good vibes and feedback from it. But since you're a CI newbie, as I read from your what you'd like to talk about, there are a ton of people who are also CI newbies, and I think that they would probably benefit a lot from the questions that you're asking. How would you feel about me posting our conversation later, maybe on YouTube
Yeah,
or Facebook?
yeah, that would be fine.
All right, cool, great. All right, so I'm definitely going to do that then. And I'm excited to share with everybody our conversation then. So first, I want to ask you a little bit. So you told me that you're teaching in Wisconsin. What are you working with? What does your class look like? What grades do you have? What's your setup?
Well, I currently am teaching seventh and eighth grade, and we split Spanish one in half. Now, this is the
Hmm.
first time we've been doing this because in the past I had Spanish for sixth grade, seventh and eighth, and it was one, two, and three. And then we noticed that, the pandemic hit. So what ended up happening was the kids weren't really retaining any of the material because
Hmm.
the fact that we were out of the classroom. So we reverted back to splitting Spanish one in half and then offering the first half to seventh grade. And then the second part of Spanish one would be eighth grade. So that's my current situation right now. And I'm also the ESL teacher for the district, but um, it's a very small district, I should say. We're a
Okay.
suburb of Milwaukee, in the south part of Milwaukee. So not a whole lot of people. St. Francis, where I'm located, is about, um, I would say like about 3,000 residents. So our school is very small. It just consists of elementary, middle, and high school. So I'm the only Spanish teacher at the middle school, and there are two other Spanish teachers at the high school. And I would, I we're trying to see how CI is working, or at least I am,
Yeah.
because I've been teaching, give you a background about myself. I've been
Tell
teaching
us.
for almost 20 years. And when I started teaching about a billion years ago, everything was grammar based and
Hmm.
everything was um, done out of the textbook. We had to use our textbooks, we had to use the ancillaries and all those other things. So I'm used to that. That was something that I was comfortable with because that's what we were told to do. We have to follow the curriculum that was set by the textbook as well as use the supplies that were given to you by the publisher. However, I noticed that a lot of kids are not really retaining anything that they learn. They're not trying to do, um, they're not trying to use their Spanish in quote unquote like the outside world.
Mm.
But they were really super with grammar. But the problem is that's not how the world works. I tell them it's not all multiple choice or fill in the blank. So that's why I'm trying to shift towards comprehensible input, because I've seen the way that it works with some other teachers. However, like I said, I'm the only one in my department at my school. And I know that I have a little bit more freedom because of the fact that my level 1 is split into 2 years. So I do have a lot more time compared to trying to cram everything into 1 year. So that's what I've been trying to do. I admit that I don't really have very much experience with CI other than what I've observed from other teachers, either through videos or seeing them in action. I know the one good thing about the pandemic is there were a lot of staff developments, or there were a lot of teacher conferences that were offered for free online. So that was good because I was able to participate and able to watch some of the things. But watching it is very different compared to being in front of the classroom and presenting the material.
Oh yeah, it's
So
totally different.
I'm constantly asking myself, am I doing things correctly? I know that I try to go slow, especially since my kids are younger compared to the high school students. I try to teach a lot slower than what I'm used to. And then I'm also trying to not get hung up on the vocab. And I guess for me, because of the fact that that was my background and that's what I'm so used to, in the past, I would give them vocab lists and just tell them, okay, well, this is your job, is to learn the vocabulary, and not really applying it or really using it in authentic situations or in realistic situations. So that's where I'm currently at. And then also another thing is I know that pretty soon they told me, my admin told me that somewhere down the line, like in about 2 years or so, they were telling me that we should start thinking about which materials we would like, because currently we're using Samos.
Mhm.
And I will say it is the version that we have is pretty old. It's about 2007. And I know that's not really relevant to what the kids are used to. I mean, the other day, we weren't looking at the textbook, but there was like a worksheet that one of the kids happened to glance at, and they said, "Oh, what's an internet cafe?" So,
Oh no.
so that's why that was my other question too, is what are the types of, like, the first question is, how does, well, what is comprehensible input supposed to look like? And then my second question is, what types of materials should I be looking for, and what should we think about getting down the line? I know probably something more in line with technology, because let's face it, nobody likes lugging around a big textbook, and plus something that's not really grammar based, so to speak. So
Oh,
those were the questions I had.
you got so much to work with here. And the questions that you're asking, I'm really glad that you're letting me post this, because the questions that you're asking, Michelle, are the questions that everybody else who is starting and is in the same positions as you. I've certainly been this way, where you are in a small school and you're the only Spanish teacher at your school, but like one of probably a few world language teachers just even in your district. And you're very much accustomed to a different approach to teaching. Like, it's not a bad approach to teaching the way that you're used to, it being very grammar focused. It's a different approach to teaching, and it leads to a different outcome. As you've seen, it leads to the students being very proficient in being able to talk about language forms and features, which isn't really what you want them to be able to do, right? You want them to be able to
Yes.
function in real life contexts. So
Yes, I would like them to learn not only about the language and culture, but actually immerse themselves and be able to use it in different situations. Because I will admit, when I grew up here in Milwaukee, way back when, we didn't really have a big Hispanic population in my part of Milwaukee where I was from. But now it's different. I mean, everything is changing. So I want my students to be able to communicate not only with me, but also in the outside community as well.
Yeah. And like talk to their friends that they have at school, like be able to, you know, not have to choose between the YouTube channels that they follow and be familiar with the culture that, you know, America's just immersed in, really. That is an admirable goal that I think every Spanish teacher has. So what you're looking at right now is that moment of like, the edge of the cliff, like you're looking down and like, oh no, I got this big drop that I need to make. I made this beautiful path. I have all of these, you're not giving yourself enough credit, of like all this wealth of experience and everything that you've brought to the table so far. And you feel like you have to make this huge leap to jump into what feels like a huge paradigm shift for a lot of people. And it is in some respects a huge paradigm shift, but I would say that the whole leap into like proficiency style teaching, it's less of like a giant cannonball jump and like a slide at a water slide. Like you can find your way down there. You just got to know where the slide is at. So how do you find your slide is the next question, right? So yes. Where you should be looking at for resources is y'all are not really yet in the position to get a full, robust curriculum, like the things that you're probably used to. Like a lot of that just doesn't really exist quite yet in the world. Like you can make most people have just been putting pieces and pieces and pieces together, right? Like including myself and lots of other creators out there who even focus in the proficiency space. What is the slide, the little water slide in the meantime, is having the ability to get in front of your class and have the confidence that what you're teaching is going to lead them to the outcomes that you want. So it's easier to make that giant paradigm shift because like resources is like a whole nother ballgame and a whole nother question. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But the first thing that I want to address for you, Michelle, is that you mentioned earlier that you don't know if you're doing it right. And it feels like every time that you like watching somebody, like maybe even an expert, do a whole demo on a way that you can teach a lesson is very different from trying to actually put it in front of your class, right? I have felt like this so many times. And that's actually why I created my own free conference, like what you're talking about, because I thought that was the hardest part about getting into this whole teaching style was, do I know that this is working for me? Like this is going to work on my day-to-day lesson plans, and how do I continue this? So you will know that whatever you're doing with your lesson plan will work for you based on the outcomes, not necessarily what you're doing. And this is the crucial difference. So many people get hung up on, am I doing this method right? Like, am I teaching to the eyes? Am I asking questions in the right pace? Hi. Am I using the right story? And did I make this text comprehensible enough? And all of that stuff is really important. Like, I ain't gonna lie to you, that stuff is important. But honestly, that's stage 4. Like you're in stage 1 or 2. And it's important to understand the sequence. The sequence that you're in right now is you're going to be looking for at the end of the lesson, are my students able to understand me? And are they crazy interested in what I'm saying? And any way that you do that is comprehensible input. Like there's no such thing as like the CI method. Like there are a whole range of lesson plans, a whole range of resources, a whole range of strategies that you can try. Anything that gets your students crazy compelled to give you a response that you don't even have to prompt them for, something that's interesting, that they finally feel like they can respond to, that's how you know that it's working. So in your early stages, finding things that your kids are really interested in, which I know you're already good at because you're already an expert teacher. And I mean, like, look at that background. Come on. Like they're obviously interested. That something that you can do, like I can just give you a sample here too, is you could give character names to all of the cool, like kawaii tacos that you got behind you. You could give them names and give them little stories to follow along with. And you could have this, you could ask the students, like, what should we name the taco today? Like, and then the next day you should say, where should the taco go today? And the day after that could be, okay, well, you decided the taco's going to the store. What does the taco buy at the store? And if the students want to give you an answer, and they can give you an answer, you're doing it right. And it's going to be messy. It should always feel messy in the beginning. And you'll know that you're doing it right when students want to give you answers. And it's not every student right away. It's certainly not going to be perfect by any means, but in stage 1 and 2, what you're looking for is, are they interested in what I'm saying? And can they either understand me or respond back to me, depending on what stage they're at, right? Because there is going to be some time in between there. How does that feel for you?
Yeah, that does clarify a lot of things, because I will say this, like the 8th grade group that I have is more, I would say, receptive, and they do answer more in Spanish. So that was my other thing too, because for my 7th graders, it is harder to get them interested in things. 8th grade, I think, because of the group, they've been with me since 6th grade, I think that they are a little bit more, I don't want to say enthusiastic, but they have more of a bigger response compared to 7th grade. 7th grade, I do have a lot of reluctant learners who I try to stay in the target language about 90% of the time, because I know that's important. But I will admit, it is easy to slip back into English with them, because for the 7th grade, I do get a lot more kids who are going, huh, what's going on? And even though I repeat quite a bit and I try to slow things down, I don't know what it is about that group. It is a little bit different, where I feel like I have to constantly stop and try to get them to understand more. I don't know how to explain it, but to try to get them more receptive to using the language, I would say.
It sounds like there's a different level of investment in what's going on, which it plays out and people see it in their classrooms on the surface level. I know I've experienced this. It's funny that you experienced it with your 7th graders, because when I was in middle school for a brief time, I always experienced it with my 8th graders, because they were like too cool for school at that age. But I think that the crucial difference for you is you hit the nail on the head, is that they're invested in you. They know you and they feel safe in your classroom. They got that relationship down. Which speaks to the whole idea of that language cannot exist without that solid, safe relationship, right? So with your 7th graders, I don't think the difference is in how you're presenting the language, because if you're already doing 90%, like you're doing more than like most of us can ask for. That's really hard. The difference might even be in, go back to the community building, go back to creating the invested relationship. So what does that look like? It could look really different for your 7th graders. You're going to know the best answer for your class, but I'm going to throw out some ideas for you. In a situation where you're getting a lot of like, I don't know. If your gut reaction is, well, you should know, like these are things that, we've gone over. I know that this is at your level. Is that what they're doing?
Sometimes, yeah. I do notice that there are some kids who think they're kind of too cool. They don't. Some kids have admitted to me that they are afraid of making mistakes. They don't want to look stupid in front of their classmates. And it's funny you said that for 8th grade, usually it's like the other way around. I will say this, the second half of the school year, that's when the 8th graders start to think, oh, I'm really too cool. But right now it's still first semester. But once they start thinking about high school in the horizon, that's when these start to kind of fall apart. But my seventh graders, I will say, there are a couple of kids in there. It's not a very big class, but a couple of kids in there who have admitted, well, I don't want to really try to speak in Spanish because I don't want to look dumb. I don't want people to make fun of me. And I tell them all the time that's not really the case. And but still, I know that there are some who are still very timid, or not timid, but they just don't want to look like they're vulnerable, I guess, in
Yeah.
front of their peers. I will say that I do notice that sometimes.
So it sounds like you need a community check for the
Mhm.
classroom culture. And that,
Okay.
especially if it's just a few kids, see if this is speaking to you. What you can do, and I've done this before, and I know other teachers do this too. What this can look like is in right at the moment where students are starting to do like, huh, what, I don't know, is you can go right back to basics and say, you know what? We're going to have the rest of this lesson is going to be in English. And here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to have a community huddle, a community chat. And the community chat this is exactly how I did it, is the students all take out a sheet of paper and you ask them 3 questions. The questions being, how do you feel about Spanish class? How do you feel about speaking Spanish in Spanish class? And the third question is, what do you want out of Spanish class? And
Okay.
see what their responses are. And you will probably be really surprised by what you get. And then those answers will determine what you do on day 2. When I asked my French 2s this question, when I had a room full of crickets, an absolute room full of crickets in French 2, that shouldn't be a thing. And I asked them this exact activity. How do you feel about French class? How do you feel about speaking French in French class? And then what do you want out of French class? And I had no further prompts, but said, you guys are not speaking French and you're not responding to me. So I need to do a check on what's going on here. And I collected all the responses and I looked through them the next day. And then after some time, went back and showed them all the responses. Like I typed them into just a Google Doc anonymously so that they could see them. And the responses were things like this. I really like French class, but I don't want to talk in front of my friends. It was like a lot of those kinds of things. But then the number one response from most people was, what do you want out of French class? Was, I want a good grade and I want to speak French. And so then I asked them, do you guys see what's going on here? Most of you answered, I am afraid to speak French in front of my friends. But you all want to be able to speak French by the end of this course. Help me understand how you're going to learn how to speak French if you don't speak in front of your friends. And they gave a lot of really good responses. Some of them were, well, like, could we do more stuff in pairs? Could we do some speaking quizzes outside the door? Could we do things like this and that? And, they were really collaborative groups. So they gave me a lot of ideas for ways that they wanted. They were really, really quiet class, really shy. And they did not want to speak in front of other people. And that was what they wanted. So I catered to them. I've done this with another class that was a little more on the contentious side. And there were really only 3 students who gave rather negative responses, and the vast majority of the class was like all for it and happy to roll with it. And so I had individual conversations with those 3 students, and the classroom community definitely shifted. So I would address the elephant in the room. Like, there's a reason that they're not giving you the same environment as your students, and I would see if you can diagnose it, but let the students diagnose it for you. Because something that I found that I noticed a lot about my classroom is that I had a lot of thoughts about what was going on in my students' heads. I had a feeling of what was happening and what they were thinking and what they were afraid of and what they were feeling. And then I asked them, and they were much braver, much more mature than I actually thought they were. And they showed up in huge ways and wanted to be a collaborative part of the process. And after that activity, I did something called norming the classroom for using more target language and speaking in front of each other. And that is a process where like you guys create some of the community rules together to make the students feel like they're a part of what happens in the classroom in terms of when it's time to speak Spanish. In that process, you say, listen, y'all, we have to speak Spanish for Spanish to happen, and I have to speak Spanish to you. But I'm not doing my job right unless you show me that you understand. And you can show me that you understand in a variety of ways. Like you can give me a hand signal, and you could teach them a hand signal, like I love it, or like, oh God, I don't know. Or you could have them like raise their hands, or just a simple like sí or no, or como or dime. And then you can progress to other norms, like what would make you more comfortable in the classroom. Like you'd be surprised, like 7th and 8th graders are definitely ready to have that conversation, and there's like 5 or 6 of them that aren't.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
I think these are all good suggestions. Because like I said, I didn't really know if I was on the right track. And then of course, like I said, there are some kids who are very just reluctant learners. So I think this might be a good way to kind of rein in the classroom environment a little bit, rather than having them kind of revert back to English, and then me also going back to English to make sure that they understand.
Oh yeah, because that's the hard part, right? I would see if you can see what's going on in your class and have your students speak into that. And you could work with different questions. You could ask them something different. Like you'll know what to ask them. That's what I ask my class. You'll know what to ask them. Just use those questions to get started. But get a pulse on what's going on and what their thoughts are and what goals they have. And what they're really, really thinking about class. And then the next step after you diagnose it is doing the day-to-day, building up that community like crazy by doing things that don't feel like you're building up community, but you really are. And it doesn't even really feel like you're doing anything special with proficiency or any of that stuff. But this is the thing that really helps to diagnose a lot of showing up for you. Like when you want your students to show up for you, you got to show up for them. And it happens in ways like make a list of the students that you know are not giving you the types of responses that you want in your classroom, and go out of your way for an entire week and make sure that you talk to them specifically 3 times a week for like 3 weeks in a row, and give them a ton of special extra attention. Find activities. So the next question that you wanted to know is like, what types of things should you go into? Find activities, things that go into crazy hyper personalization. Like the best part about Proficiency is that it's a natural community builder. If you can do activities, like I highly recommend special person interview, because I think it's low prep, it's low entry. You just have to look up a little bit about like how to do it. And I can direct you to a blog post for all that good stuff. That it shows students how to use the language, but more importantly, that they're a really important part of your class, because you're using the language to ask them questions about themselves. And it makes them feel really important, like they're really seen as a part of your class. And if you don't want to like dive into special person right away, what you can do is even things like making stories about your students and making your students the star of the class in that way. So maybe even instead of the taco, you could have a student that like especially 7th graders, you might have some students who are definitely the star of the show, and they might like this, is you can ask students to be the center of your warm-ups and your lessons and your stories, and put their names in everything and personalize like crazy in your day-to-day interactions. And that will feed into what they give back to you when it's time to chat and when it's time to use the language. Another thing that you can do that I really loved was using passwords at the door. It seems strange, but it actually builds a good bit of community because the students have to rely on each other in order to actually get into the classroom. And then your classroom also feels like a secret space that they have to enter by knowing the password to get in. And your password can be something really simple, like a simple phrase. If you use music, I used to give them like the line from a chorus to get into the door, or maybe they answer a question on the way into the door. Like I used to ask them things like, ¿cuál es tu canal de YouTube favorito en este momento? Things like that. And they would have to respond. And it didn't have to be anything serious. And they honestly didn't even have to really respond in Spanish. Like they would just tell me like, oh, you know, me gusta mukbang. They would say that all the time. And then they don't have to produce a lot of language, but you're learning about them. And then they're hearing a lot of questions at the same time. And it's a huge community booster.
Yeah, those are all good ideas. I knew about the special person because I did see that. I did see that at a couple of online foreign language conventions that I did attend over the summer. So I did see that. I've been trying to use that. I wasn't too sure about the passwords, but now that you explained how that works, I think that would be something that I could try as well.
Feels weird, right? Like so I contacted the creator of the activity, Bryce Hedstrom, because I saw him do it at a workshop, and he mentioned it, and I even saw him do it at the workshop, and I was like, I don't know, it sounds weird because it sounds very exclusionary. But then we hopped on a call together, and he explained why he did it and showed me a video, and I was like, sold. I'm gonna try it. And like if it bombs, you know, whatever. It's no big deal, because you'll find that in this world of proficiency, there's lots of different activities, and not all of them are gonna stick. Like some of them work really well, and some of them are just not for your teaching style. Some of them are not for your students. So put them through the Michelle filter and through your students' filters and see if you like it. Like that's part of the process of figuring out what works well for you. But go with the simple ones first. Passwords are pretty simple. But he showed me why he did it, and I thought to myself, I'm not going to do it exactly the way that you do it, but I like why you're doing it. So I started to make speaking quizzes out of them. So I took all the questions from my speaking quizzes and I made those the passwords each week so that my students were hearing the question over and over and over again. And then they also had to answer it in a personalized way. It helped me to get to know them better. And it also, you know, created that line out the door. Plus, you know, you'll be like famous in your school. People will start talking about you. They started talking about me all the time at my super tiny school. They're like, look at all these kids speaking French in the hallway. Yours will do that too.
I will try that. Yeah, definitely. I think now that I have some information that I didn't have before, I think that will be very helpful.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yes. I'm glad to hear it.
So I will keep you posted. I know that my time is almost up. I don't know if there was anybody else after me, but I will keep you posted and let you know how that goes. But since our semester is almost done, I think that would be probably a good time for me to kind of gauge the environment. I think I will ask those questions, especially of my 7th graders, because I have a feeling a lot of them will answer that they just want to have a good grade, but they might surprise me. I know that there are a few kids there who are Hispanic, but they don't speak Spanish. So I know a lot of them say that they do want to learn so that they can speak to their relatives. However, I know some of them are still kind of reluctant. So
see what they say, because I think you'll be interested to see what those responses are. And even at the end of the day, you'll just know a lot more about your students, and the message that you're sending is that you care a lot about their experience, and that speaks volumes, and that creates so much trust. Like that's the number one reason you should do it, is that even if it doesn't go over the way that you want it to, the number one message that it sends is that you care a lot about their success and their experience. And they honestly can't say that about every teacher in the building. I don't know about you, but my students used to say that to me sometimes. It wasn't often, but they knew which teachers cared and which ones were like, meh. meh.
Yeah.
So it sends a huge message. It really will, of like, I don't feel like you guys are getting out of this what you need. Let me help you get there. I need you to answer these questions so that I can help you. It makes a huge difference.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I really
Thank
appreciate it.
you. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
you. I have a quick question before
Sure.
you go. And that is, how did you first learn about proficiency style teaching, and what kind of things are you using to teach you about it in your classroom? This is going to help me out as I move to serve more teachers like you.
Well, like I said, prior to the pandemic, it started to, well, because of the fact that I know some the the teachers who were at my district previously, I was told that they were in the process of looking for new materials. So we just started the preliminary stages of kind of finding out what's out there. And then we did start to get put on a couple of mailing lists. And then, like I said, in the past, I did attend a lot of in-person foreign language teacher conventions. And then that's where I started finding out bits and pieces about proficiency, and then also IPAs and task-based assessments and things like that. So it was really a gradual process for me, just finding out through word of mouth, attending a couple of conventions. I know that in the past I attended the one here for Wisconsin, and then I also lived in Texas too. So I attended a couple of conventions in Texas as well. So that's where I started to learn about proficiency, moving from grammar based to proficiency and comprehensible input.
Mhm.
And then for the time being right now, we've been kind of putting together our own materials. I know that I don't know too much about what the other two Spanish teachers are doing at the high school because they teach other levels. We only kind of use Evan Samos as like just something that's there, but we don't take everything out of there. We don't really use it exclusively anymore.
Mhm.
But that was when that was purchased before any of us were even there. So, but we have been also looking into readers
Mm.
as well.
Those
So
are
that's what,
amazing.
yes, we've been using a combination of readers and then a lot of authentic resources, as well as our stuff. And again, based on what they've attended and me too virtually
Mhm.
for a lot of the past couple of months. Yeah.
Gotcha. So when you're referring to your own stuff and things that you find and like authentic text and stuff, what is working well for you with those, and what's frustrating about trying to find them?
Um, what's working well is well, at the beginning of the year, I did what you had mentioned, try to find out what the kids are interested in. So what I've done is I've either worked with some of the other Spanish teachers, not only the ones that I currently work with, but some of the ones I worked with in the past in my other school districts. So we kind of been sharing some of the materials back and forth. Um, just trying to find things that would interest the kids. It's not very easy, I will admit. I think that's probably the frustrating thing. And then, of course, like the availability. And then sometimes it is difficult if you don't have enough time if you want something that's really great, for instance, an infograph or something like that, to try to make it mesh and work for you, especially for the lower levels. Because I know everything for the lower levels has to be a little bit watered down. So that's, I would say, the hard part. But um, a lot of times the kids will say, "Oh yeah, that was really interesting," or "I like learning about certain things in the culture." So it does help to find out what their interests and hobbies are.
Gotcha. All right. That makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you
Mhm.
so much for all
You're
your
welcome.
answers and for your time. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate this session. Thank you so much for offering this.
Of course. Well, keep me posted on how things go in your classroom and what happens with your community builder. I really hope it goes well. And thanks for sharing some of your time with me, Michelle. I look forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yes, I will keep you posted.
Good. Can't wait.
All right. Have a
Bye.
nice evening.
You too.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.